I'm here with Caleb Jamel Brown, artist extraordinaire. I was wondering, you do so many things. How do you list when you introduce yourself what you do?
I'm just a multidisciplinary artist. I like to say sometimes multidisciplinary, sometimes interdisciplinary, because I feel like a lot of times when you bring multiple mediums or materials together, then it's like its own thing and not necessarily a combination of the two. It's like this whole new entity almost. And also a plumber. So that's usually how I introduce myself. But right now I've been on the multidisciplinary artist thing.
You brought up like the idea of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary kind of taking its own form. So I was going to walk through just an example of the kind of work you do. You wanted to make clothes. And so you started out like making the clothes. That's one way of doing it. Then you brought in like artists to photograph it and then like different artists to like be involved with the shoot and styling. Then you put the work in a museum gallery space, displayed it in a completely unique way, and then brought in choreographers and dancers to like move through it. When you start to think of these ideas, how do you allow them to evolve into like these bigger projects? Do you feel like you're starting with a core of I want to work with this kind of medium or I want to work with this central idea?
In that case, I think that comes from like genuine interest in all those parts of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm interested in design, but I'm also like not necessarily a designer, so I want to work with designers that inspire me. I'm interested in dance or movement, and I don't necessarily do that. So inherently, I want to reach out and work with people that inspire me. That is their medium. Same for like working with galleries and different institutions or whatever brick and mortar space. Like I don't own these spaces. Really, just yeah, it's just genuine interest in all parts. Sometimes I find myself wanting to be able to bring the entire idea and production together, but oftentimes I want to focus on one small part of it. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just a critique of the critique of a certain form of design as an aspect of communication, or the acknowledgement that hey, like this group of people is producing these things that have this through line that I think is more noteworthy than people are really talking about, you know what I mean? Or just like this thing isn't getting enough attention, you know. So it comes from various motivations, and it's usually kind of idea specific, which is also a big reason why I consider myself multidisciplinary. Even think about the idea of like mastery within art, and that's kind of expectation, become an expert at it. For me, I agree with that, but then I also think for me, my pursuit of any sort of mastery is in this sensibility around like collage or assemblage or bringing fragments together and or organizing. You know, I mean, that's kind of the medium that I'm seeking to master, I guess. I answered a lot of questions, but I think it answered your question as well.
It did. And I think we'll come back to a lot of that. It makes me think of what you're doing is collage work on like a micro and macro scale. So out on a craft level, what you're doing is bringing together all these like various pieces for your pieces. But I think you're also that you're and this is how I view you is like collaging Atlanta a little bit, like bringing together communities to execute or like try their hand at executing an idea.
Hmm.
So I feel like your engagement with the community is really pinnacle to what you're doing. How do you view your engagement with the community, your visibility in spaces, visiting other artists, networking? Do you find that to be something you have to actively work for to be able to do what you do? Or is it something that just comes naturally to you to be among artists in that way?
I think Atlanta specifically, even though I've been spending a little more time outside of Atlanta recently and like trying to spend more time in New York, but even it really just come from just wanting to, I guess not necessarily mobilize, but like do whatever I can to catapult the voices of artists and people that I love and believe in. and seeing that they're just not getting enough attention and just don't have the resources to have sustainable practices that you get in like say like the New Yorks or LAs or some of these other cities that have more artistic infrastructure. But I think whether or not it comes natural to me, it comes natural. Like, yes, I understand the world through art and artists and creators and cultural producers on all levels, even people that don't necessarily consider themselves artists, especially like Black people from the South specifically. So it's like, I think a lot of that is a lot of what drives me to reach out and make those connections comes from understanding that it's necessary, but it also kind of goes against like my natural like personality to some degree. It takes like a lot of effort, and that's why I have times of like doing really social projects, like for example, when I was doing that series of photographs that you were involved in, where I was coming to different artists around the city and like photographing them in their space and all that. That was act of vulnerability for the artists and designers that I was and writers that I was photographing, but it also takes a lot of effort for me, like those sort of social situations at times. So yeah, it's just more so it feels like something me pushing myself to be more social and more engaged. But then also on the other hand, it's me feeling some sense of responsibility to use whatever platform or opportunity I'm able to obtain in order to like benefit other artists like myself in the community that are wondering how I was able to get there. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like that's all I can really do in order to like truly give back. It's just provide opportunities when I can.
Yeah. I think it's easier for me to socialize if it's around something like art or something like an idea I stand behind, then it's easier for me to like do those social engagements. So I was like, I've met you in art spaces. I think like the most times we've hung out is like working on projects, and that there's like a comfort in that, that it's driven towards something, but there's like real relationships that build behind that. That's always really nice. Another thing I was thinking about, are you ever concerned about uh, your artistic authority, or if your work is so in the hands of your community to build, do you ever have concerns about how much you may be decentralized as the main auteur of the work? Is that not an, I mean, it probably isn't an issue because you've done it so many times. You may not think like that.
No, I mean it's not an issue, but only because like I've like worked through it and understand it as like being bigger than me already. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, and a lot of these ideas, I don't like, they're not proprietary ideas. You know what I mean? We're adding like our own little bit of twist and style in it, me and everyone involved, but like, I don't own it. You know what I mean? It's not like a business model or idea that I came up with. It just happens to be that all the individuals involved are different than the individuals involved and wherever somebody else did it. So that's the secret sauce, and that's not really a secret. You know what I mean? So I don't really, yeah, I don't feel like I own it.
Yeah. I'm not the first one to come up with this idea. I don't have to concern myself with being the original. It's my offering at this time in this space to the people who are here. And that's enough of a difference. Um,
Yeah, and then you're gonna bring something to it that hasn't been presented before, but it's not the actual idea itself. I think it's the act of bringing that idea to fruition that is unique to you or anyone else. You get what I'm saying about that? Like when you move, it's your body moves different than anyone else. When you think of words, you have a specific cadence or language. So that's what's unique. It's like the way you do something, not kind of what you're doing sometimes.
yeah, it's freeing to think like that too. You're not burdened to that expectation. So that's always a pleasure.
Right. Right. Yeah, because then that can be crippling. Just
Yeah.
trying to be the first for anything. Like,
Yeah. It just can't be done anymore. So it's like not important.
you know,
Um, you talked about mastery earlier. For you with your craft, what does it look like when you're not necessarily working on a project? What are the things you do for yourself or seek out to better the art that you make? If you're this interdisciplinary artist, maybe you're not trying to master one thing. How do you focus your time when you're idle?
Like out, just completely outside of project, like when I'm in between, like
In between projects, you want to get better
project
at art
or
making. And
making in general.
so what, or is it making, or what do you do when you're not working on projects that benefits your art?
Yeah, I guess if I'm not working on any projects, I guess I'm like hopefully I'm giving myself some time to like really rest and like, but I mean that in the sense that I have to like, in order for me to do that, it takes me like giving myself like a start and stop date of like this period of time you are not making art, you are not really thinking about more than I can control, you know what I mean? Because to
Mhm.
some extent I can't help but not to like, I don't know, contextualize most of my life in the process, like how it relates back to like making something.
Mhm.
But usually I try to give myself periods of time where I'm like, I try to cut off those trains of thoughts at time. When I just try to go out and see stuff, honestly. Sometimes I'm like trying to read more, just, yeah, I'm either reading, trying to see a bunch of other people's art, trying to go on hikes, just living, like that's until like I can't really take it anymore and I just got to start back making. So
Yeah. Did you read anything good lately?
what have I been reading? I've been reading this book on, I recently checked out Black and Blur. It's like a book by Fred Moten, and I'm not like a huge Moten stan,
Mhm.
honestly, but it was relevant to some of the work I'm doing. But I've been reading this book on echolocation
Yeah.
because I'm doing this project with Blue Heron Nature Preserve that I'm the artist in residence with. I've been interested in bats forever, and I mean it's kind of nice. Like I feel like this project is actually like a good way to think about my interest out completely outside of art.
Yeah.
But it's kind of come full circle in the sense that I was awarded this artist in residence opportunity with the Nature Preserve. So then now I'm able to like make art about bats, which is some animal that I love and I've been wanting to do forever. I have like multiple tattoos of bats, but it never really fit into like the general like themes or whatever of my art. So yeah, I'm reading a book on like echolocation in bats and how they use it to maneuver the world and other animals' hearings and so I've been
That's kind of a great example of like how you bring in these outside interests. I didn't know you like bats so much.
I have like a few bat tattoos.
Why do you like bats?
Why? I just
What do they represent to you?
aesthetically they're cool. They look cool to me, you know what I mean? They're also like kind of dog-like. I think they just simply look cool. They're also like pretty amazing creatures in the way they're able to like not only how they fly, but like their ability to echolocate and like their sonar is really cool. Then they also like guess I kind of love the underdog story, like or like this misunderstood. You know what I mean? They're like an essential part to any like thriving ecosystem, but people just view them as like disease ridden like pests that like give on rabies and other disease. Like, cause then they say like even like COVID or something came from bats at one point, weren't they saying something like that?
They
I
said
don't
it
know
came from everywhere.
exactly.
I don't know.
But yeah, so I think that's partially why.
Yeah, they're big sweethearts, right? Like they don't mess with people.
Yeah, and they're cute. It sounds like there's like three species of bat that like vampire bats. Only like a few species of them, and most of them aren't biting humans. I mean, maybe like some of them would in certain regions in the world, but they don't even.
So with certain people.
Yeah, I mean, then for us, like they don't even live in our country. So like like the whole narrative is kind of fucked, but whatever.
Yeah, no, that makes sense with what you make art about. So that's why I was like, it's not a far leap to understand why you like them.
No, yeah, I think so too. It's like I finally it was a full circle moment. I think I like the universe really kind of looked out for me on that one. I think it was the perfect time for me to be able to do something about that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I also just like love when artists like finally get to talk about their obsessions or like make work about what they're like secretly obsessed about. Just because it brings in such wild new understandings of how to like look at something. So hopefully you can make us think about bats.
That part, yeah, because it's like what in general, I'm like thinking about like black cultural production or like black Americana, like what that can look like on, or like blue collar labor and what that looks like. I mean, and just the pressure as a black artist to like make work that's about your blackness. So it's like
Mhm.
to just be able to be like, oh, I want to make a project about bats and like be okay with that and like be justified in that because I'm just doing it for a nature preserve and no one can be like, what, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's
Well,
not
it's so interesting though because you know it's gonna come through. Like the blackness is gonna come through.
exactly. I
Uh,
know this, but that
dark.
doesn't mean the pressure still elsewhere is like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Even subconsciously, just because it's coming through your body. Yeah, I'm excited to feel what you got. Even the way you describe bats could, I mean, could easily be a description for like blackness.
Yeah.
Like you misunderstood things that I also was thinking that like when you hold a like looking at a bat's individual's face is like so cute, but seeing them in mass scares people. And I just was like, oh yeah, when you take the time to like hold something close, you can form such a softer relationship. But seeing what groups do to people as far as fear goes,
Mm,
it's just like so vastly different.
yeah.
Um, so again, like thinking about black people get a lot more scared seeing a big bunch of black people versus maybe the one black person they know. It's two different understandings.
No, I'm in complete agreement to like it's
Yeah,
always gonna be about blackness, but I'm just thinking about the people that don't see it that way. But
yeah. Are you working on more than one thing?
I'm also preparing. I have a show coming up in a few days. You know, Jamerson J. Payton, a painter. He's also from Atlanta, but he's like curated a show on the roof of his apartment building. He's done this before, like a couple of years ago, but it happens to be the same site of a old like black cultural community center and venue called the East. But it was actually, I mean, bigger than a like community center. And like there's a documentary about it now.
Mm,
But it's like they had schools and like stores, and it's like a whole kind of like black nationalist organization, really like similar to like the Black Panther Party or something. And it's like Clinton Hill. So yeah, I'm making like some a work that's kind of add into that lineage and just kind of paying homage and thinking about how they like were just promoted like self-determination in multiple ways. But then also like I've heard recounts of the space just like focused on like the venue itself is
yeah,
also, and like I'm talking like people talk about like waking up to Nina Simone being there or like Pharoah Sanders or like Sun Ra. They talk a lot about the experience playing at the venue and being in the audience, kind of being indistinguishable because it was just like such a call and response. I'm making a work right now for that show. I'm like but literally making the work right now for that show. Like I took a break from working on it to hop on the interview. So, but I'm just thinking about all that and just making a sculpture that reflects on some of the things that they were able to create. So,
that sounds really exciting to be a part of that lineage. I mean, you're a part of that story now since that space um, is such a grounding point, and then now you're like at the end of it, and it's going to keep going. So that's really exciting. Does that feel good to be a part of that? I
yeah,
imagine.
but it's like, yeah, of course it doesn't exist as the East anymore. It's
Yeah,
like an apartment complex, but yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's the same building though, even in like old pictures and stuff. So yeah, I'm like partially like trying to just make people like trying to keep people talking about it, you know what I mean? But then also it's the only context that makes sense for me
yeah,
to like work in that space. He's like, "Oh, what do you want to make?" It's like, "Oh, I mean, this is the old side of the East. Like, what else could I think about making?"
yeah,
Or it's like starts there and then trickles into like all that they meant to like the black community in Bed-Stuy and
yeah,
abroad. So that's kind of where literally just where I'm trying to think from.
yeah,
I go about it in the same way.
yeah. And even though like the area is shaped around it is so different, I mean, that's the Atlanta story. Is like the so much of the space changes, yet so much like remains the same, or these cores are so important. So it's sounds very Atlanta for it to be like an apartment building now, but this like historical site.
No, no, this is in Bed-Stuy.
Oh,
In
oh,
Bed-Stuy, but it also is the Atlanta. It's the story of many spaces. This is
yes.
in Bed-Stuy. That's
Okay, in Bedford.
in Bed-Stuy, but no, this is yeah the story of many places. You know what I mean? Art, like I mean, we always artists play such a major role in the act of gentrification through like beautification to some degree, you know, and like so we also got to keep tabs on that.
I hear you. I have one more question. How do you think about your own personal style as an artist? Because I think you have a pretty, I admire your style. You seem to have such an effortless way of presenting yourself, and especially in the artist world where people try very hard to look cool, you look cool all the time. So
Oh,
do you think about that, or do you just get lucky?
thank you. I agree. Uh, no, not no. The feeling's mutual is what I meant to say. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh yeah.
It's mutual, but no, I do. But it's not. It's definitely. I appreciate that, and I do agree to some. Like I have. I try to maintain some sort of confidence
Hmm.
in my style, mainly because the only source of that really is that it doesn't come easy. I think. I think it for me to make something seem effortless, it comes with a lot of effort to some degree. Like not that I'm like trying. I mean, yeah, I just think a lot about stuff. I mean, I think the idea, especially as far as like making effortlessness as an aesthetic, doesn't necessarily mean that there's not effort on the back end. You know. So,
Absolutely. You mentioned confidence too, and I was thinking, like, I know for me, when I had a lot, like at my peak of social anxiety was when I was dressing the best because I said like you got to dress badass so that like people when people talk to you, you got to back it up. Like you have to match the energy that you had when you were getting dressed in the mirror,
hmm,
and you have to like keep that spirit up. Like you set a bar for yourself through your clothes, and then you have to maintain that.
hmm.
For me, that was huge.
Yeah, nobody wants. I mean, then people see through. Like, if you just look cool and like there's nothing of real substance there to hold people, like
Yeah.
there's no fun. And
Yeah,
then
the person it comes down to personalities because there's cool people, like cool looking people all day. But like, I mean, it sounds silly, but like, who's a good person? Like, who do you actually want to talk to? That shit matters.
no, 100%. Well, I don't know. Style, I feel like it ever evolves. And I think a lot about my own style and other people's style. Some of
Mhm.
it's effortless, some of it's extremely intentional. And
And too, that you think about like the boundary between lived experience and the art world for you is so closely enmeshed. I think that's why when you're dressing yourself, there's an aesthetic awareness that happens when you're involved, when your brain is constantly art wired.
mhm.
I think that's a possibility.
No, I like that. I like that, especially as a kind of person that's been excluded from the like art world for so long. You know what I mean? I think it's nice that my work, and that's actually something that I think about, and is like this idea of embodiment within the objects that I make. So I'm oftentimes thinking that like when I'm not in the room, I want this work to have this kind of I want this work to have the presence, the same presence that I have, or
Yeah.
maybe one of whoever that I'm referencing in the work. But like I want it to stand in for me, and I want it to feel like me. I want to feel like I made it.
Well, okay. I think that'll be the last question.
Okay, I think that was a great question.
Uh, But thank you for being on. I appreciate it's always really, really nice to catch up with you, and I'm happy that I get to share you with the folks who listen to this.
Thanks for reaching out and just well, yeah, it's always mutual interest back and forth, but it's nice to catch up.